Welcome back to NRM 638, Python Scripting for ArcGIS Applications, Spring Semester 2015. This is an e-learning class at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. In this session, we're going to work with tables and fields. So the first thing we'll do is we'll establish our workspace as our test geodatabase. And then what we'll do is we'll run a geoprocessing tool called getCount. And getCount will tell you how many rows there are in each table. So the first thing we'll do is we'll make a list of feature classes, and then for every feature class in that list, how many rows are in the feature attribute table. So we've got our list. And now those are the feature classes in our geodatabase. So then we'll loop through every feature class in the list, and we're going to use getCount geoprocessing tool, and that returns a total number of rows in a feature class table or a standalone table or a raster attribute table. So for our feature class, getCount, and that will return a result object, and then we'll convert that result object to a string, and that will be our row count. And then we'll print our feature class and then our row count. So streamlines had 8 rows or 8 lines, and then stream buffers 100 meters had 8 polygons. Okay, so let's create a list of tables from our workspace. And list tables is very similar to list feature class or list rasters. It accepts an optional wildcard and then table type, where table type would be dbase, info, or all. So let's just get a list of all the tables. So in this example, we've got one standalone table in our geodatabase. So then we'll make a string variable called table, and that's going to be equal to the first item in our list. Okay, the next thing we'll do is make a list of fields from our table. So list fields requires a data set, so the data set could be a standalone table or some feature class. So I'll make it my standalone table. And then we could give a field type. So field type would be, if you only want, for example, integer fields, you could say integer. Or if you only want string fields, you could say string. But we'll get all the fields. Okay, so how many fields are in our test table? Since it's a list, we can use the Python length function. So there's 10 fields in our table. Okay, so from ArcGIS help, we can retrieve properties of a field object. So for example, is the field editable? Or what's the length of the field? What's the name of the field? What's the type of the field, etc. So we'll loop through our 10 fields and print out some of the properties of each field. So that would be in a loop, so print field.name, print field, and then a property, is it editable? And then print the field, and then the property, what's the type? And then print field, and then a property, is the field required? So then it goes through the loop, and the first field is the object ID. It is not editable. The name is OID, and it is required. The next field is integer field 1. We can edit that field. The type is small integer, and false, it's not required. So basically we can do that for each of the 10 fields. Okay, let's change our workspace so we can access these rasters And then if there's a raster attribute table associated with a raster, we can ask questions about that raster attribute table. So we'll make a list of rasters. So list rasters, wildcard raster type, we'll just list all the rasters in that workspace. So what are the rasters in this workspace? So there's 3 of them. There's depth, Fairbanks 250K TIFF, and leaf centimeter.tiff. So then we could loop through each raster, and then if it has a raster attribute table, then we would get how many rows in that are in that raster attribute table. Okay, so from our list of rasters, we'll loop through, and each time through the loop we'll have a variable string raster. Take that string raster and make it a raster object. And then if the raster object has a raster attribute table, then we'll print our string raster, and then the message has a raster attribute table. And then we'll get how many rows are in that raster attribute table. So get count, and then print rows, and that's how many rows in the raster attribute table. And then we'll just execute that loop. Okay, I forgot to put n paren right there. So that will make a string, and the string will be in its variable rows, and then we can execute. So there's one raster that has a raster attribute table, and that's the Fairbanks 250K.tiff, and there's 12 rows in that raster attribute table. Okay, and just like before, we can use the list fields function with our raster object to get a list of the fields from the raster attribute table. And then the length function, there's 3 fields in the raster attribute table. So then we can loop through those fields and print out properties like the name and the type of each field. Okay, so print field.name, the .type property, and the .editable property. So we've got our object ID, and it's not editable. We've got value, it's integer, we can edit it. We've got count, it's integer, and we can edit it. Okay, so if you go to the Blackboard website, I've got a scripting assignment for you for this week working with getting information about feature classes, rasters, and tables.